Hello everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. I don't think I have ever been this excited to start a reading vlog. So today, January 15th, is the beginning of the historical romance readathon. This is being hosted by Jess from Peace Love Books, Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers, and Lisa from Remarkably Lisa. I will be sure to link all of their information down in the description below. So this readathon is lasting from today the 15th, like I said, to January 21st. And so basically the idea is to read as many historical romances as you can in a week. And I have quite the TBR. There is a bingo board for this round of the readathon, but I don't know if I'm gonna really follow it. Like, I'll probably glance at it to see what is on there. I don't know who I think I am that I'm gonna read 25 plus books in a week. Like, I'm not Jen from the Book Refuge. If you don't know who she is a romance booktuber. I'll link her probably up in the cards or down in the description. And she reads at least 20 books a week. I am not exaggerating. Definitely check her out. I love her recommendation videos especially, but I love watching her weekly wrap-ups because I am just in awe of how many books she can read in a week. Why don't we kind of get started with what I am currently reading? So late last night, I started The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan. This is going to be my very first Courtney Milan book, which I'm really excited about because I know that she is a very beloved author in the romance community. And I'm really excited because I'm doing a buddy read with my good friend Dana. I'm gonna link her channel either up in the cards, down in the description, you know the drill. She is someone who I've quickly become friends with on Instagram because we both have been following each other's channels for a while. And I'm really excited about doing this buddy read for this book because I've never actually really done a buddy read before. I was thinking about this the other day. I remember last year I had tried to do this like group buddy read of the Throne of Glass series with a random group of people on Twitter, but I was the only person that was actually reading the book, so like that was a little bit of a buddy read fail. But I'm really excited to discuss this book with Dana, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm about 18% of the way through. I'm on to like chapter 5, something like that. So this is about two main characters. I think they're both Chinese. I think Jeremy is half Chinese, and I think Chloe, the main heroine, is Chinese on both sides of her family. So it's definitely an opposites attract romance. It's also kind of a second chance romance because I think 3 or so years before this book started, they had almost kind of started something. She wanted him to like really get his shit together before starting something with her, and so now he's back 3 years later. I immediately really love Chloe's character because she is really into making lists. Like, she literally has her own clipboard that she takes with her everywhere that she goes to make sure that she's keeping up with her to-do lists and things like that. And also she's known as being someone who's intimidating. She says that a lot, that people have told her that she's intimidating. And I just relate to that so much because people have told me that I'm intimidating, and I just love that Jeremy is just so unfazed by her. But yeah, I don't have a ton to say about this book so far because like I said, I'm only 18% of the way through. So I'll probably update you guys maybe tomorrow morning. I don't think I'm gonna really update you guys tonight, but I thought I would also quickly mention my tentative TBR for this readathon. So I have a few physical books here with me. The first one I have is A Notorious Vow by Joanna Shoup. So this is actually the optional group book for the readathon, and it is the third book in her 400 series, and I have not read the first 2 books, but just like with most romance series, they're all companion novels, so you don't really have to read them in order. So I'm excited about reading this one because I know that it features a deaf hero. And then let's see, I have a Tessa Dare book because you knew that was gonna happen. I have A Night to Surrender by Tessa Dare. This is book 1 in her Spindle Cove series. I'm really excited to start this series, so hopefully I can read this week. Then I also have Devil in Winter by Lisa Kleypas. I definitely want to read this week. This is definitely a priority for me because I've been wanting to read this book for a while. This is book 3 in her Wallflowers series, and I've heard nothing but rave reviews from like the entire romance community. Then what else? I'd really like to get to 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. This is a book that I have heard Jess rave about. Dana, I think this was her favorite romance book of 2020, if I'm not mistaken. Quite a few people have been reading this recently and really raving about it, and I do enjoy Sarah McLean's books, so I definitely want to get to that. I also want to get to Once More My Darling Rogue by Lorraine Heath. This just sounds like so much fun because it's pretty much the plot of the movie Overboard, if you're familiar with that film. So it has the amnesia trope, and it sounds like a fun time. And then also, I really want to read Unmasked by the Marquis by Kat Sebastian. So Kat Sebastian is an author. She typically writes male-male historical romances, but she's also written some sapphic romances. This one, I believe, features a non-binary main character. And then we have our hero, who's the Marquis, who essentially discovers our main character's secret. Because I think at the very beginning of this book, he meets this man who he's very attracted to, but then he discovers that she's actually a woman dressing as a man, but I think she may identify as non-binary. I'm not really sure, but I'm really excited about this one. I have really enjoyed the 2 books that I have read from Kat Sebastian. I would also love to read, I think it's called A Gentleman Never Keeps Score, because that is book 2 in a series by Kat Sebastian that I have read books 1 and 3 from. I think it's the Sedgwicks series. I think it's a series that just centers around these 3 brothers, and I loved books 1 and 3, so I would love to get to book 2. If it doesn't happen this week, then I'll read that soon. Needless to say, I have a lot on this TBR. As you can see, like, there is this whole list going on my notes app, so yes, I'm very pumped for this week. I have my Cherry Limeade from Sonic. I am ready to jump back into The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan, and I will update you guys when I can. It is just about 1:30 in the afternoon on Saturday, and I am so pumped because I finished 2 books since I last talked to you guys, which is so exciting. So The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan, I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed it. This will definitely not be my last Courtney Milan novel. I am fully planning on reading her other historicals ASAP because I really enjoyed this story. Like I told you guys in my last update, I related to Chloe's character a lot, but Jeremy, oh my goodness, he was so freaking funny the entire time. Like, literally everything that came out of this man's mouth I just found to be hilarious. I loved his sense of humor so much. But also he ended up being a very sweet and swoony hero at the same time. Also, this has the virgin hero trope, which I love to see. I don't think I've ever read a historical romance that has that trope. Yeah, can't recommend it enough if you're looking for a new author to try in the historical romance genre, or just a new book to try, because I love this so much. And this is book 1 in a new series by her. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more books in this series as they come out. And then the book that I just finished literally like maybe 10 minutes ago is A Duchess a Day by Sheris Michaels. So this is book 1 in a new series by her. The series is called Awakened by a Kiss. And what's interesting about this series is that they are fairy tale retellings, but she wanted to focus the series on forgotten characters from these original fairy tales. So this one, for instance, centers on the huntsman character from the original Snow White story. And this was just such a fun little twist on the Snow White story. It's also a bodyguard romance because we have our hero Declan. He's known as the huntsman. He's a mercenary. He works as a bodyguard. And then we have our heroine Helena, who is betrothed to this duke that she just does not want to marry. And so this duke's uncle employs employs Declan to be Helena's bodyguard and to make sure that she goes through with this marriage. Another fun twist on the Snow White story is that Helena is trying to interview these various women in her social circle because she's trying to pass this Duke off to some other woman, you know, hoping that he'll fall in love with somebody and marry them instead of marrying her. And so she interviews these 7 women, and they all embody the different personalities of the 7 dwarves. Like, we have one that's extremely happy, we have one that's sleepy, one that's grumpy, which I thought was just a fun little thing to add to the story. So yeah, I ended up giving this 4 stars. I'm definitely looking forward to reading more books in this series as they come out. So I think what I'm gonna do now is take a nap because I've been up since 8 a.m. Saturdays are my early days because I teach a music class at 9 a.m. every Saturday. So I have to get up by 8. And then I ran some errands after class, and I also got some Cane's, which, if you don't know, that's like my favorite fast food place ever. Yeah, once I get up for my nap, I am planning on starting A Notorious Vow by Joanna Shupe. This is, like I mentioned earlier in the vlog, this is the optional group book for the readathon, and I am so excited because I already know that I really enjoy Joanna Shupe's writing, and her Uptown Girls series is everything. But this is book 3 in her 400 series. I'll read a little bit of the synopsis on the back. It says, with the fate of her disgraced family resting on her shoulders, Lady Christina Barkley has arrived in New York City from London to quickly secure a wealthy husband. But when her parents settle on an intolerable suitor, Christina turns to her reclusive neighbor, a darkly handsome and utterly compelling inventor, for help. That sounds really great, and I am just so pumped for this, as you can tell. So yeah, with that being said, I will probably update you guys at some point tomorrow. All right, hey guys, so it is Sunday evening. It's just about 6:30 p.m. and I did finish another book since my last update. So last night I read the entirety of A Notorious Vow by Joanna Shupe. I absolutely devoured this book. Oh my goodness. I am not exaggerating when I say this is definitely one of my top favorite historical romances now at this point. I did talk a little bit about the synopsis with this one, but just to give you more detail, we have our hero Oliver Hawks. He is deaf and he's a recluse. He lives in his own very opulent mansion in New York. This novel takes place in Gilded Age, New York City. And then we have our heroine, Christina, and her parents are just trying to marry her off to the highest bidder because they are desperate for money, mainly because I think Christina's father is a really bad gambler, and then also they just have a lot of debts from when they were living in London. So they are British and they made their way over to the US so that they could find some rich man to marry Christina because nobody in London was interested in her, basically. So Oliver and Christina end up meeting and becoming really good friends, but her parents are just relentless, and so Oliver eventually agrees to marry her. So this is a marriage of convenience story, and from page 1 I just could not stop reading this book. I loved the 2 main characters so much. I loved the story. I thought that Joanna Shupe did a great job of writing a main character who is deaf. You could tell that she definitely did a lot of research with this novel in general. I don't know, this book just really worked for me. I know it doesn't have the highest rating on Goodreads, so you know, I might be in the minority of people who absolutely adore this novel, but I love a good marriage of convenience slash friends to lovers romance where the 2 main characters have to overcome so much to be together. So yes, cannot recommend this one enough, and I'm really looking forward to reading the other 2 books in this series. And then in terms of what I've been reading since finishing A Notorious Vow, I started Her Wicked Marquess by Stacey Reid late last night. I only got like an hour through the audiobook last night. So I've been slowly but surely working my way through this one today. I think I'm about 52% of the way through at the moment. I just listened to a few chapters while I was getting ready to film today because I actually need to film my mid-January wrap up. So this is about our main character, Marianne, and her parents are also pretty relentless in trying to marry her off to someone. This one does take place in London. And so she's betrothed to this man who's pretty awful, and he's also like 50. He's way too old for her. And then there's this man, Nicholas, who is this notorious rake. He's a marquis. Marianne decides to try to ruin herself so that she doesn't have to marry this awful man. by anonymously tipping off the scandal sheets, because during this time in London, there were these scandal sheets. It reminds me so much of Gossip Girl because the writer of these sheets never reveals who they are, but they just spill all of the tea within the London society. So she tips off the scandal sheets and tells them that Nicholas has ruined her, so that hopefully this man that she's betrothed to will cancel their engagement, even though nothing has happened between her and Nicholas at this point. So that's the main catalyst for the story. I'm enjoying it so far. This is book 2 in her Simple Wallflower series, and I really enjoyed the first book, which was My Darling Duke. That one was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Loved that one. This one I'm enjoying. I don't think I'm enjoying it as much as that first book. But yeah, that's gonna be it for this update, and I will talk to you guys at some point tomorrow. All right, so it is Monday afternoon. It's just about 4 p.m. and I have 3 books to talk about somehow. So pretty much right after I last updated you guys last night, I filmed my mid-January wrap up, which of course will be linked up in the cards above. And then I went downstairs and read like another chapter or 2 of Her Wicked Marquis by Stacey Reid, and I decided to DNF this at the 57% mark. Like I said in my last update, this book was fine most of the time that I was reading this, but once I got past about the halfway mark, for me, I just very quickly lost interest. I realized that I really didn't care about the 2 main characters at all or their story, and I was just bored because this book is very slow paced the entire time. And at first I was okay with it because obviously, you know, I read over half of the book. Like, obviously I was okay with it, but yeah, once I got to the point where I decided to DNF this, I was just done. I did not care. I'm definitely not writing off Stacey Reid though, because I've heard really good things about one of her other books. I think it's called Accidentally Compromising the Duke, and a couple of other books in that same series of hers. So I'm definitely gonna check out more books from her, but this one just did not work for me. So I immediately decided to start A Night to Surrender by Tessa Dare after I DNF'd that book, and I'm so glad that I did. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I went into this book not expecting much. This is the first book in her Spindle Cove series, which is the first series that she wrote with Avon. Before that, I think she was either self-publishing or indie publishing books. And I was looking at the reviews for this on Goodreads, and even people that I know love Tessa Dare were giving this book like 3 stars. They were very underwhelmed by it. So I went into this not expecting much, even though I know that I love Tessa Dare. And the funny thing is, I ended up giving this 5 stars. I loved this so much. So this whole series takes place in this coastal village called Spindle Cove. This is a village where mostly women live. There's only a few tradesmen that live in the town. We have our main character, Susanna Finch, who acts as kind of a caregiver for all of the women that live in this town. This town has gained a reputation for being the perfect place for spinsters to go live out the rest of their life, or for women that have kind of been outcast from society to go spend some time, maybe take a vacation. Yeah, Bram, our other main character, he was in the army, but he got shot in the knee, and so now he has a very distinctive limp, so he isn't able to serve in the military like he used to. And so now he's on his way to Spindle Cove to talk to Susanna's father, who is a very respected member of the military, I guess you could say. So he's trying to get Susanna's father to like write a letter of recommendation for him so that he can be put back in the service. So the second that Susanna and Bram meet, there are definite sparks. I really enjoyed the romance between the 2 of these characters. I saw on a lot of reviews that people don't like Bram's character because he does have very antiquated views of women's roles in society. But I loved that Susanna was always challenging him and his views. She never let him get away with any bullshit that he said or anything like that. I just love this little world of Spindle Cove. Like, I wish that I lived here. Like, it's just the perfect little village. All of the side characters were so entertaining. Just like with every other Tessa Dare book that I've ever read, I chuckled so many times while reading this. There are just so many entertaining scenes abandoned moments. So yeah, this book just really worked for me personally. I can't guarantee that it'll work for you, but I personally really loved it, so it was my second 5-star read of the Readathon. And then what I'm currently reading now is Once More, My Darling Rogue by Lorraine Heath. This is going to be my very first book by Lorraine Heath that I'm reading, and I decided to pick this up because Lisa from Remarkably Lisa, she's one of the hosts for this readathon, she raved about this, I think in her guide to Lorraine Heath video that she did. I'll link that video either up in the cards or down in the description below. And the plot just sounded absolutely fantastic to me, so I had to pick this up during the readathon. So we have our two main characters. We have Drake, who is a commoner, but he was taken in by a duke and duchess, so they raised him, but because he's not their biological son, like, he'll never inherit a title or anything like that. He's not really an aristocrat. And then we have our other main character, Ophelia, who is definitely an aristocrat. She looks down on Drake. She snubs him constantly. She is very rude to him. So basically later that night, after this ball that they were both at happens, Drake is walking home. He's walking along the Thames River, and he sees a body that has washed up onto the shore of the river, and it turns out that it's Ophelia. We don't know what happened to her yet. I'm very interested to see that mystery unravel and see what happens. I mean, I have an idea of what happened to her and who did this to her. But yeah, basically he rescues her, takes her back to his house, and it turns out that she has amnesia. She doesn't remember anything about who she is, what her life is like, her relationship with Drake, nothing like that. And so he decides to tell her that she is actually his housekeeper, when that's definitely not the case. I don't know, I'm really enjoying this so far. I'm very entertained by this weird relationship that Ophelia and Drake have with one another. I mean, at the same time though, it's definitely not a comedy. It's definitely a bit darker of a book. Both Drake and Ophelia have darker pasts. They both have secrets that have not yet been revealed yet. So yeah, obviously I'll give you guys my full review once I finish this book, but I am loving it so far. All right, hey guys, happy Tuesday. Today's already been kind of eventful, because I actually recorded a podcast with a good friend of mine. Her name is Jessica. She hosts the podcast, The Self-Aware Millennial. I'm gonna link down below the specific episodes that I recorded with her. There was just a lot to discuss that we ended up recording 2 episodes worth of content. And if you're curious to know what we discussed, the first episode was about fat phobia in general, but also fat phobia in the theater industry. For those of you guys that don't know, I'm an opera singer, but I am also a musical theater performer, so I grew up performing in the theater industry. And then part 2, we discussed theatrical romances, meaning instances where we have had to be intimate with a stage partner on stage in front of an audience, and that whole experience. So there's definitely a lot of stuff to unpack with both of those topics. So I thought it went really well though. This coming Sunday, I think she told me the first part is going to be uploaded. So I'm excited. I had never been on a podcast before, but it was a really fun experience. Jessica is a childhood friend of mine. We did some theater stuff together when we were both children. So yeah, I'm excited about that, but that took about like 2-ish hours, and now I do feel a bit brain dead now. Like, I don't know, talking about such complex issues like fat phobia and theater in general, like there was just so much, and yeah, my brain is just kind of done for the day. But it is about 3:40 p.m. and I finished 2 books last night, which is really exciting. So I finished Once More, My Darling Rogue by Lorraine Heath. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it for the most part. I think for me, at times it was a bit too slow paced, and I think that it could have been edited a bit more. It was just a bit too long. Like I said in my last update, I just really loved the premise and how it's like the historical romance version of Overboard. I immediately really liked both Ophelia and Drake, our 2 main characters. They're both very flawed people, but they feel very real, and I loved the development of their relationship. I also loved Lorraine Heath's ability to write this situation where you don't think a happily ever after is possible, just because of the drama and the angst. And you know, the fact that Drake has been lying to Ophelia for most of this book, but I really enjoyed the way that she wrote the story. So I definitely recommend this one. This is book 2 in a series, but just like in most romance series, you can read these as standalones. I'm definitely going to probably check out the other books in this series, but I want to check out more from Lorraine Heath in general. So late last night, I started and finished The Devil's Submission by Nicola Davidson. This is a historical romance novella. It was just about like 114 pages, I think, and I bought this on my Kindle a couple months back because Jen from the Book Refuge raved about this novella. I think she was doing like a BDSM romance recommendations video, and the premise of this sounded absolutely perfect for me, and it truly was. This was literally the perfect historical romance novella for me. So we have our two main characters, Eliza and Grayson. They've been married for, I want to say, about like 6 months. Like, they haven't been married very long. And now their marriage is in trouble, actually. They no longer live together. They are separated. She now is living in the country with her parents, and he is living in London. He is actually a co-owner of this club called Fallen, which is essentially a sex/BDSM club. We learned pretty early on that Grayson, our hero, he is a submissive. And early on in Eliza and Grayson's relationship, they were both really happy. Grayson especially, because Eliza was taking control in every way in their relationship, not just in the bedroom, but outside of the bedroom. And that's really the kind of person that he needs to be in a relationship with to truly feel happy. But after they got married, basically Eliza's mother put this idea in her head that she needs to be subservient and submissive to her husband. So Grayson quickly just kind of lost interest in Eliza, and they just were not happy with one another, and that's kind of why they ended up separating. And so now Eliza is thrown back into Grayson's life because a mutual friend of theirs is getting married. And oh my god, this was one of the hottest novellas that I've ever read, let me just say. If you love a plus-size heroine and a somewhat nerdy submissive hero, BDSM, a sex club in a historical setting, you are going to love this novella just as much as I did. Oh my god, like I literally put on my Goodreads review like screams into the void because that's how much I adored this story. And I had never read anything from Nicola Davidson before, but rest assured that I will be reading more from her. I'm definitely going to read the other 2 novellas in this series, but she's written quite a few backlist titles, so I cannot wait to check out more from her. And then in terms of what I started today, I'm just about like an hour and 15 minutes into the audiobook for Unmasked by the Marquis by Kat Sebastian. So this is book 1 in one of her historical romance series. I have quickly fallen in love with Kat Sebastian just because she writes like the softest and most wholesome male historical romances. Like, they're just perfect. And I also adore the narrator that she has for all of her audiobooks. I can't remember his name, but he just has the perfect voice for like the vibe and the stories that Kat Sebastian tells. Like, I don't know how else to word that. I'm really enjoying this so far. I immediately loved all of the main characters. I'm just obsessed right now, so I'll definitely do more of an update on that at some point tomorrow when I do my update. But I've just been having such a fun time with this readathon. I'm so happy that I haven't gotten burnt out like with previous readathons. It's definitely been an issue in the past where, because I'm reading so many books of the same genre, I do tend to get burnt out. But this time around, I'm just so excited about all of these historical romances that I'm picking out for myself that I'm definitely not feeling burnt out at all. So yeah, now I'm gonna go take a shower and then immediately jump back into Unmasked by the Marquis. Oh girl, I just looked in the viewfinder. My hair is crazy right now. I just got back from teaching a couple of voice lessons at the studio I work at, which is literally right across the street from me. So I just get to walk to work and it only takes me like 2 minutes tops. So in terms of a reading update, I finished Unmasked by the Marquis by Cat Sebastian later last night. There were just a lot of things going on yesterday between recording that podcast, and then I had a lot of organizational things going on. I'm trying to get some sheet music organized because I'm going to be making some recordings soon for a music competition. So I was doing stuff like that last night. So unfortunately I couldn't listen to the audiobook while I was doing all of that. I adored this. I gave it 5 stars. Oh my goodness. I need more queer historical romances in my life. What's great about Cat Sebastian is she pretty much exclusively writes LGBTQ plus historical romances. And like I mentioned in an earlier update, I've read 2 of her books before that are a part of her Sedgwick series, so I definitely need to read the second book in that series. So I think I went into the plot in my last update, but honestly, that plot synopsis that I gave was just so convoluted that I decided to cut all of that out of that clip. So I'm going to explain the plot here. So we have our main character, Charity. That was her given name when she was born, and she does go by she, her pronouns. Cat Sebastian in her author's note made a point of saying that Charity is totally fine with she, her pronouns. Some non-binary people are, some people aren't, obviously. It depends on the individual for sure. But Charity is her given name. She goes by Robert Selby. She is impersonating a man. There's a whole convoluted plot behind why she is impersonating this man, but essentially she's pretending to be this woman Louisa's older brother. And so they come to London because she wants Louisa to find and marry a respectable man so that she can be supported for the rest of her life. And so that's where Alistair, the Marquis of Pembroke, comes into play. So Alistair and Charity, although she likes to be called Robin, so I'm gonna refer to her as Robin because that is her preferred name. So Alistair and Robin, these are the 2 main characters that the romance centers on. And man, this book just really worked for me. There was the perfect amount of angst throughout because obviously it's kind of a forbidden romance because she's living as a man even though she is biologically female, and she also doesn't want to wear dresses. She doesn't want to live her life as a traditional woman. So Alistair can't just marry her because she's not going to be the traditional Marchioness that he kind of wants her to be. So there's definitely a lot of angst going on with the story, but I love the way that everything wrapped up and everything was resolved. I definitely plan on reading the other 2 books in this series. I think this is called like the Regency Imposters. But yeah, I loved getting to follow Robin, getting to follow a non-binary character in a historical romance. That's just something you never see. So I highly recommend this one if you're looking for a good LGBTQ plus historical romance. So in terms of what I've been reading since, late last night I started 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. I think I mentioned this earlier as well. This is one of Jess's and one of Dana's like favorite romances that they read in 2020, so I was very excited going into this one. Actually, what's funny is that this physical copy came in yesterday, like right before I was planning on starting the ebook, so that was great timing. Also, I got this used copy off of eBay and it's in great condition. First of all, I love like how shiny and shimmery it is, and the spine isn't broken. Like, it's in great condition. Also, there is a step back and I'm absolutely obsessed with it. Very happy with this eBay purchase. Sometimes when I buy used books off of there, they come in worse condition than I was expecting, but this one came in like immaculate condition, so I'm very happy. But this is book 1 in the Love by Numbers series by Sarah McLean. I've read a couple of Sarah McLean's books in the past and I have enjoyed them. I think she has a very unique writing style, especially in her more recent releases, whereas this book reads a bit more like a typical historical romance in my opinion. This one is about Calpurnia. She is 28 years old. That is how old I am, coincidentally. And she at this point is an established spinster because in the Regency era in England, if you weren't married by the time you were like 25, if you were a woman, you were considered a spinster. And maybe earlier than that. I feel like people were expected to be married by the time they were like in their early 20s, which is very unfortunate. But also people were living shorter lifespans back then, so I mean it kind of makes sense, but not really. But there's this man, Gabriel, who is the Marquis of Ralston. She's kind of had a crush on this man for like 10 years. She met him formally when she was 18 at a ball, and she's kind of been enamored with him ever since. And so she decides that now that she's 28, she has nothing to lose at this point. She doesn't really care about her reputation anymore. And so now she just like wants to have fun. So she makes this list of 9 things that she wants to do before she dies, basically kind of like a bucket list. Like one of the items is to kiss someone passionately, ride astride. You know, women during this time period, they had to ride side saddle, which I think is absolute bullshit. Attend a duel, fire a pistol, gamble at a gentleman's club. She just wants to have more fun. She's just tired of being the boring good girl in a sense. And I think she's also kind of a plus size heroine. I think she's at least curvy, because they mention throughout this book a lot that she's like plump. So I don't know, I think that's interesting as well. So basically Gabriel and Calpurnia, she's also known as Callie throughout the book, they make a deal that she will help his half-sister come out into society, and in exchange for that, he will help her complete all of the items on her list. And this is just so much fun right now. Like, I am so here for this. I am on page, let's see, 168, and that's just about like the 42% mark. I'm just loving it, and I can totally see why both Jess and Dana love this book so much. So I'm really excited to immediately jump back into this book, and I'll definitely finish this at some point tonight. And then my goal for the rest of this readathon, which is just one more day, we only have one more day to the readathon, which is just crazy, but I've been having so much fun reading all of these historical romances. But my goal is to read at least half of Devlin Winter by Lisa Kleypas. The only thing that sucks about this book is that there are no audiobooks available for this series anymore. I think the publisher took them off of like Audible and like any other audiobook website that you can think of, which is very unfortunate, because audiobooks are how I can read books as fast as I do. So unfortunately, I'm just gonna have to read this physically, so it's gonna take me a bit longer than I would like. I'm still really excited about this one because so many people adore this book, and I hope that I do as well. Alrighty, it is Thursday night at about 9:30 p.m. I thought now would be a good time to wrap up this vlog. I am wearing glasses, and I do not need to be wearing glasses right now. Okay. So I thought it would be a good time to wrap up everything that I read this week, and all of that. I'm actually going to rank all of the books that I read this week. I thought that that would be a fun little twist. First, I wanted to talk about the 2 books that I finished last night. The first one was 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake by Sarah McLean. I ended up giving this 5 stars. I totally see why Dana and Jess love this book so much. Yeah, it's just such a fun and adorable and sexy romance. I feel like those are the 3 perfect words to describe this book. I loved how Gabriel would call Calpurnia, or Callie, Empress throughout the book, because throughout this story we see that Callie doesn't think very highly of herself. She just sees herself as a very plain spinster, and he starts calling her Empress to kind of remind her of how beautiful she is in every way, and I just love it so much. I'm actually really looking forward to reading the 3rd book in this little trilogy. It's called 11 Scandals to Start to Win a Duke's Heart, which is going to be about Gabriel's half-sister, Juliana, who was introduced in this book. Basically, Nicholas and Gabriel are twins. They learn that they have a half-sister. Her name is Juliana. She is from Italy, because basically their mother ran out on them when they were like 10, and then went on to have Juliana with another man. I'm just so excited because we've been introduced to both Juliana and her love interest in this book, and I just feel like that is going to be such a fun book. And then I also read the novella. It's called Unlocked by Courtney Milan. This is technically book like 1.5 in her Turner series, I think. This one I ended up giving 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. So we have our hero Evan, and when they were younger, I think it's been about 10 years since the 2 main characters have seen one another. When they were younger, Evan was really cruel to Elaine, the main heroine, and so now he is back in town and he is trying to make up for all of that. I just adore that trope so much. Like, if you guys can give me your recommendations for romances that use that trope of one of the main characters treating the other main character terribly in their past and now they're making up for it, like, I'm just so here for that. I'm glad that I'm reading more from Courtney Milan, and I definitely plan on reading more from this series specifically. But she has quite the backlist, especially of historical romances. So I'm really looking forward to checking that out. So before we get to my ranking of all the books that I read, I want to point out this amazing sweatshirt that I'm wearing. Okay, so I tilted the camera down so you could see it, but it says romance novels, and then it says they're actually really good stories. So this design is from Fugly Barbie. I will link their Etsy shop down in the description below. I also got this really beautiful t-shirt. I got this one in light blue, and it has this beautiful design, and it simply says romance novels, and I am just obsessed. I love the aesthetic of Fugly Barbie, and they have been coming out with this whole romance collection lately, where they have different shirts for very specific subgenres in the romance genre, and I'm just obsessed. Okay, wait a minute. I actually have one more thing to talk about before we get to my ranking of all the books that I read. Okay, so I have been working on Devil in Winter all day today, although I haven't had a ton of time to read today because I went on a walk with my mom and our dog Chloe, and then I was FaceTiming with my sister Kimmy and her husband Thomas. So there's just been a lot of things going on today, but I did read the first 100 pages or so of this. I am specifically on page 106, and I'm enjoying this so far. I do want to bring up that there is some pretty fat-phobic language in the very beginning of this book, just to tell you a little bit of what's going on. So we have our main character Evie, and she has been very mistreated by her mother's side of her family. Her mother passed away a long time ago. So yeah, her mother's side of the family is essentially trying to get a hold of her inheritance by having her marry her cousin Eustace. So this man Eustace, he is overweight, and he also treats Evie very poorly. We see that just like all the other members of her family, like they all treat her horribly. Something that really pisses me off in novels in general is when an author makes a villainous character overweight and uses their outward appearance to make that character seem even more revolting to the reader. So specifically what I mean, I'm going to read you a direct quote from this book, but basically Eustace has reluctantly proposed to Evie, and she rejects him. And he says, "What a blithering idiot you are." Like, obviously he's a mean man. He is not a nice person, but he says, "What a blithering idiot you are," Eustace said impatiently. He threw the ring to the floor in a fit of temper, his arm jiggling heavily with the motion. It's language like that. I just feel like it's harmful. It's fat-phobic. You know, you're using someone's outward appearance to make them seem more disgusting or revolting to the reader, and I just don't appreciate it. There's more quotes like this in the book. I really don't want to read them because they were quite triggering for me. This is not something that I want to read at all, regardless of it being a romance novel or any other kind of novel. It honestly reminds me of the kind of language that J.K. Rowling used in the Harry Potter books to describe the Dursleys, to make them seem even more disgusting to the reader. I just don't think it's okay. So I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I kind of considered DNFing this right away. That was on page like 18. It's like the very beginning of the book. I am glad that I have kept on reading because luckily Cleopus isn't harping on that man's appearance anymore. We are getting into Evie and Sebastian, who is the hero, their story. All right, so let's get to this ranking. At the very bottom, I'm gonna start from the bottom and go to the top. The very bottom has to be Her Wicked Marquis by Stacey Reed because I DNF'd that one, obviously. Didn't really enjoy that one. Next after that, I'm gonna put A Duchess a Day by Cheris Michaels. I enjoyed this one. Like I told you guys earlier, I gave this one 4 stars. I am finding it to be a pretty forgettable novel the more time that I spend away from it though. Then above that, I would put Unlocked by Courtney Milan. Again, really enjoyed that one. It was a really good novella. Above that, I would put Once More, My Darling Duke by Lorraine Heath. I did really enjoy this one. The premise especially really pulled me in, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading more from Lorraine Heath. Then above that, I'm going to put The Duke Who Didn't by Courtney Milan. I gave this one 4.5 stars. Then this is where the ranking got really difficult for me because all of these books I gave 5 stars. So it was really difficult for me to differentiate like which ones I enjoyed more than others. But next up, I put Unmasked by the Marquis by Cat Sebastian. Then after that, I put 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake. That was really difficult, specifically between this one and Unmasked by the Marquis, which one to put above the other, because I pretty equally enjoyed the two of these. Then after that, I am putting A Night to Surrender by Tessa Dare. This one really took me by surprise. I talked about this earlier in the vlog too. I really thought that I was going to be pretty underwhelmed by this one, and I ended up loving it. My second favorite book of the readathon has to be A Notorious Vow by Joanna Shupe. You guys know that I devoured this book. I love it so much. I cannot wait to read the other 2 books in this series. And my top favorite read of this readathon has to be The Devil's Submission by Nicola Davidson. This novella just ticked all of my boxes. I cannot wait to read more from Nicola Davidson, not only in this series specifically, but just like more of her backlist titles. So yeah, that is a total of 10 books that I read during the readathon, but I finished 9 of them because, like I said, I DNF'd Her Wicked Marquis. So I had so much fun with this readathon. Thank you so much for joining me for this fun little reading journey that I had this week. I sincerely hope that you enjoyed watching this reading vlog. If you got to this point in the vlog, I would love it if you would leave a comment with the rose emoji. There's a picture of it right there. And I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you in advance if you do. Also, if you want to discuss any of the books that I mentioned in this video, please leave a comment down below. Also, thank you again, Jess, Lacey, and Lisa, for hosting this readathon. I always have such a fun time doing these historical romance readathons, so please do more of these in the future. And with that being said, that is going to be it for this video, guys. Bye!